Hello friends, I'm Vivek Atray and we're here for another episode of the Good Vibe Show. It's a fantastic day because I've got two very witty friends and I can safely say that they're probably the wittiest men in North India. And North India is deliberately said. Neelesh, you welcome. Avnish, you welcome. And
that puts a lot of pressure on us. We've got to be funny at all costs.
I like to put pressure on my guests, but then I make them very comfortable.
Fair enough.
And just to set the tone and the fun, we were testing the mic before we started, of course. And I was once at an event where Bill Gates was testing the mic, and with Prannoy Roy on stage, and we were all in the audience. And Prannoy Roy said, "Mic check 1, 2, 3." And Bill Gates said, "Mic check 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion." So he has a sense of humor as well. Although,
I suppose I will end up saying mic testing 10 paise, 20 paise, 30 paise.
So Neelesh, first you, thanks for coming. And
anytime.
You are someone who Chandigarh is very fond of.
I'm fond of Chandigarh too.
We are shooting this show in Chandigarh. You are an author of repute.
Thank you.
You're a radio voiceover person. You have done lots of multi-dimensional things. But I want to start with your book,
Right.
In the Footsteps of Ram.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your great work on that book.
It's actually a seminal work in which, for the first time, anyone has ever travelled all the way from Ayodhya to Sri Lanka on the precise paths that Sri Ram, Lakshmanji and Sita ji took while in Vanvas, gone to every single place where they were, unearthed local stories, and also put in a bit of the travelogue in it. So this is a book in which two things run parallelly. One is my travels along the route, the interesting people I met, and then there's a story of the Ramayana. Both things move together. But this is something which has been done for the first time probably. So
that's not only done for the first time, and of course you preempted the big hype around the Ram temple by many years.
Yes.
And you did all that and really researched. And then the writing part, the element of writing which we'll come back to, and that wit and that class of describing something.
Thank you so much.
Which Mr. Neelesh Kulkarni has.
Thanks, Atai.
Which we know for a fact.
Thanks, Atai.
That's why you're on the show, by the way.
I knew there was a catch to it.
Col Sharma says to his guests, Col Avnish Sharma, I'm going to introduce now. He says to the guests, he says, "Aapko kaisa lag raha hai show pe aake? Avnish ji kaisa lag raha hai show pe aake?" Kaisa lag raha hai?
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. So Avnish ji is someone who is, of course, he's commanded a unit, he's from the army, and I won't go into the semantics or the technicalities. He is a director of the Military Lit Fest, and he's a very witty speaker on stage. And he starts like Navjot Sidhu a little slowly and then goes on to 4s and 6s. But Avnish ji, without wasting time, I would want to ask you, how is the transition from the armed forces to civil life? It's been years now. And how does it feel? Do you still feel like a Fauji?
Look, Mr. Atray, it's a fact. You would have spoken with a lot of Faujis. Once you are in the army, it is you get married to it. It's all over you. Though I'll tell you that my father wanted me to be a lawyer. My mother wanted me to be a doctor. I was unfit to become a doctor because I was miserable in academics. And I didn't want to become a lawyer because I happened to go there and I didn't find the condition of the courts so amenable to take up this profession. But I was still undecided, and there's a friend of mine who's an army officer's son. He got a form. He says, I'm going to apply for the army. I said, get one for me also. And ironically, he didn't make it. He didn't make it ever. And I got it in the first time. And once I was through, my results came. That's the time I informed my father that, look, this is... So they were aghast because I am the only son. But lo behold, I went there and he said, get back home as soon as possible. So I said, look, I am in the army now. My aim is to command a unit. So once I command a unit, then I'll take a decision. So unfortunately, he expired early, so I was home at the age of 47. So I am now almost 17 years into the CV street, and I've been coming on leave. I've done my college. I've got friends here, and I read a lot. So I was not actually totally divorced from the civil life, and so I'm making the best of the both worlds. You know, you're an army man. You have that instilled discipline. Though I was late about 10 minutes today.
Not for the time of the show.
Time of the show. But otherwise, the army is in me. All the positives. I think it's the best thing that happened to me was to join the army. I served 27 years, and I am going to die a Fauji as and when that happens. So that's it.
It's really remarkable how Fauji's talk so easily about death. I'll come back to you. I mean, it's a part of life in a way. Death is
yes,
part of life.
yes.
Nilesh ji,
Ji.
the switch from the corporate world to the artistic world, and he used the word marriage, married to the forge. What about Madam's role in that as well? Mrs. Kulkarni.
I know sooner or later it gets down to her. They keep asking me in all the interviews that I take. Well, certainly the fact that she's extremely supportive of all that I do, that her inclinations are the same as mine. She's a painter, so she paints, I do theatre. So we have been into these things long before we became corporates, so even before we married each other. So these passions predate our getting together and predate my corporate world. So I think in a way I'm just going back to my roots, and she's also helping me, and I'm helping her to get back to her roots of being a painter.
Well, how did you become so good a writer, a speaker, and then also theatre? So people are good at one or two things. What right did you have to be good at so many things?
I didn't have a right. I had the privilege of being a vela. So when you are a vela, then you have so much free time that you can actually devote yourself to learning more than one thing. So I ended up doing that.
That's a good
So I guess that's about the only reason. God granted me the opportunity to, experiment with a lot of things. And as I kept experimenting, I kept growing. As I kept growing, I kept going into things and did things better.
How much of your life is about writing per se? I mean, is it a project? Do you sit down like Ramchandra Guha 4 hours a day and write? Is that your main occupation?
I would want it to be, though sadly it is not, because I dabble in so many other things. For instance, every Thursday is my voiceover recording day, every Saturday is my play rehearsal day. Then there are 2 days a week when I go and look after my company which I run. So I'm not able to do that regularly. But yet I do try that I pen in at least 400-500 words almost every day. Without that my books don't get completed.
Avnish ji, you said, and first I must clarify the Avnish name. And you must clarify for us why you are called Avnish instead of Avinash. And we've never heard, I have to practice your name before coming on the show. But Avnish ji, tell us about this love for reading and then writing also, because we're on that subject. Start with Avnish and then come to that.
Okay, Avnish, I thought, for a long time, I never found anybody with the name of Avnish. And then I kept on asking my parents, I said, I hope this name is correctly pronounced and correctly spelled. He said, yes, your Fufa has kept this name, he's an English professor. And, but, nobody could spell or write my name Avnish. It was either Avinash or Ashwini or Ashwin. When R. Ashwin came into it became Ashwin, and people started calling me Munish. All kind of funny things, but Avnish. And then I got married, and my wife is an MPhil. She's a gold medalist, very literate lady, far more literate than her husband.
अच्छा रहता है तारीफ करना. For posterity, it's recorded.
No, because she's going to see it. I have to.
Also for tonight when we go back home.
She, till now, Mr. Atray, she cannot spell my name correctly. Can you imagine? But then, finally she's given it up. Now we have settled at Janu.
How convenient, how convenient.
So Janu is very convenient.
Yes.
It makes me feel high. I love her, so there is no issue.
Yeah,
I was there I'll tell you a very funny incident. I was posted in Shimla in the Army Training Command as a Lieutenant Colonel when I got approved for my next rank and my call to command a unit. So I got a signal. Even the army headquarters has never spelled my name correct. Can you imagine that? It is always Avinash.
So somebody else got promoted in
So the signal read, Lieutenant Colonel Avnish Sharma is promoted to the rank of full colonel and is seconded to so-and-so unit to command it. So it wasn't a surprise for me. And then the unit that I was going to, CO is supposed to be a godfather. He's a feared, loved, everything, mixed of emotions. But he is a tiger. So I thought, I got a special order. Special order is a normal formality when the unit sends it to you. That on assuming command, what do I have to say? And the guy who's leaving, he writes there on relinquishing command. So there also it was Avinash. So I was aghast. I said, these guys had it. I said, the 2IC, I know this guy, 2IC is a long-time friend of mine. How can he smell my unit? And when I was thinking that, I got a call on the landline, sitting in the office. Sir, this is Neeraj. I said, hi Neeraj, how are you? I was a little depressed. I said, then Neeraj, come on, I mean, this can't be a clerical mistake. My name is there on the special order of the day. It is going to go to the all units of the Indian Army. He says, sir, he was a wittier than what you could think of.
He's not from North India.
And so he said, sir, I thought maybe, these days celebrities are changing their name, they are modifying their name. So I couldn't help but. So this is the kind of thing that has happened with me as far as reading is concerned.
And writing.
You see, I was debating. As a student, I was debating regularly. That's how my father wanted me to be a lawyer. I had a habit of reading because my father was very fond of reading. Fiction, I've read all James Hadley Theatre, all Perry Mason, all Fives, all whatever you have at that point of time. And then when I joined the army, we had a very funny CO. He wanted to inculcate a habit of reading in everybody. So everybody who went on leave, he said anybody who has to come back has to come back with a book and donate it to the library in the officers' mess. And so that went on, and that's how I got married to probably this educated lady, because she probably thought that I had intellectual vibes.
Every 3 minutes a compliment is going out.
I know.
Good.
I have to plan to do better than this.
So now I started writing when I was in the service. I used to write very casually and all that. But then when I got back, I used to write for service journals and on topics of military and all that. When I got back, that was in 2007, I started writing middles. I sent 2-3 of them to the newspapers and they got rejected. Then after 6 months, 7 months, I said I got one call back from Hindustan Times. Accepted. And that was the beginning. Now I've written about 250 for the
Turning Point.
Turning Point. And you see, writing is, I don't have any, special talent like Neelesh. But when I start to write, I don't write more than 750 words. Like Strathre writes so well on 700 is his limit. And I think 650 probably is my limit. And so I write, I sit down, the topic comes to my mind, then I seize everything. Then I write and say about half an hour or so I finish. And another 15 minutes to correct it, and for spelling mistakes or the things that you Fauji hai, isko aata jata, so those minor SD points, and then I send it. And so I'm very happy with the kind of writing that I do, and I write, I'm also the editor for the Chandigarh Golf Club. I mean, all these things, I love to write.
I am coming back to your writing love and something else also. Neelesh, I want to ask you, what gives you more joy? You've done some cricket commentary also.
I have.
So comment on the commentary part, comment on your voiceovers, on the writing. Of course, the corporate part will be.
That's true.
What is your biggest passion out of these?
Theatre. Theatre is what is my biggest
Let's
passion.
talk about it.
Because theatre, live theatre, when you are on stage with 300, 400 people sitting in front of you, and you do good, then you've got their souls in the palm of your hand. And that's the kind of heady feeling that nothing else can
And
give.
which role particularly?
I played all kinds of roles. I think my best was Oedipus Rex, where I was Oedipus, and I've done Beckett, I was Beckett in Beckett, I was Oedipus Rex in Oedipus Rex. So fair number of these roles where I had the central role and I had the range by which I could actually demonstrate everything that I was capable of. And when I did that, and I found audiences nodding, I found them crying, I found them, sniffling, looking down, becoming comfortable, becoming uncomfortable. Now that's the high which I don't think anything else can beat.
But since we have not watched you in theatre on stage and would love to, I'm going to request you a little later to recite some poetry.
I would love to
and
do that.
also if एक ही सेंटेंस हो जाए कोई अमिताभ बच्चन का जो आपने so I'm coming back to you for that.
Fair enough.
But I have one more question for now.
Tell me.
This research that you do, he's talking about 700 words.
Yeah.
Now, for him and me, it probably comes spontaneously through experience,
Right.
through encounters,
Right.
encounters of the
Yeah.
genial kind, not the fudgy kind, and through the meetings we have.
Yeah.
For a book like yours and the book you're writing now, which
Right.
will briefly tell us about,
Yeah.
a lot of research. So how much of that, how difficult is that?
It is actually very, very difficult in the initial stages because you just start off with a 200-word summary by which you know this is what you're going to write about. Then you've got to flesh it out. Fleshing it out means, number one, you can't flesh it out with all kinds of bull. You have got to have some substance to it. Since I write non-fiction, it has to be authenticated. You've got to cross-check it. So all this is initially very, very difficult. But as the research progresses, you realize that a lot of pieces of the puzzle are falling into place. And as the puzzle keeps forming, you keep getting that high. Till finally when that eureka moment comes when you put in the last piece together and you say, now I've got my story. That is where it is proper.
But the eureka moment also comes when the baby comes in your hand.
That is another thing altogether. That's another thing altogether. That's another high altogether. High altogether. But I think the research part of it is crucial to it. I believe in research. And I not only believe in sitting on the desk and researching on the net or on books. I believe that I should actually go to the locations that I talked about. I should go to talk to the people who are part of any experience and then only write about them. Because otherwise you don't get that flavor of authenticity. I mean, anything culled off the net or written by ChatGPT will not get you the authenticity which a conversation will have.
This ChatGPT thing, sorry to interrupt, because we are in 2024, we must talk about it. I've seen messages on groups of senior officers, and those messages have not been written by them for sure.
Absolutely.
They've been written by ChatGPT, and it is going overboard. The expression, the content, everything. So the flavor of the man, which you mentioned earlier,
Yes, absolutely.
is missing.
Absolutely.
We have coffee here, it has a flavor.
True.
If we have coffee multiplied by 10, it doesn't make it better.
Make it better.
It has to be the same thing as
Absolutely. Then let's not forget that all said and done, ChatGPT is artificial intelligence. The word artificial is very important.
Very,
because it is intelligence, but it is artificial. So anything that is artificial is not going to be authentic.
And here we have
Not going to be
natural
authentic.
intelligence in this
Absolutely.
hall. Not the natural,
Absolutely.
not the
Absolutely.
natural stupidity which we talked about outside.
Absolutely.
Avnish ji, how much of your writing and what you plan to do in the future is going to be based on research, and how much of it is within you and just need to espouse it?
Look, most of my writings are based on, I call it bridging the gap. Bridging the gap into my experiences in the army, the anecdotes, and they are very funny. Army is a way of life. And I connect them, say, somebody's cook is, in the mining mafia, if you remember. So the cook strikes me, and it reminds me of a cook back home, and then and this cook is a little naughty, and that cook was naughtier, so I combine and write a piece. So most of my writings in future are also going to be on my personal reminiscences. So my research is to rankle my memory and get back and make sure that the grey matter functions in the best manner possible. And secondly is that most of my writings flow out of the sense of belonging with my wife, because I think that is the high point in my life to get
3
married.
minutes.
Oh no! I know this man is going to run us down to earth today.
No, you see,
I'm going to make
I'm
it
not doing
visible for us when
it.
you
I'm
go.
not doing
You're
it
doing it
to.
spontaneous. No.
No, that's all right,
You're
but-
pulling your leg, but you are doing it
Spontaneous.
No,
Yes, yes,
I'm not doing it to earn a golf holiday. Let me tell you, or I might be. You see,
Exactly. That possibility you cannot deny.
but it is a high point.
It's a high point.
And so she motivates me. You see, when we got there, she's from Shimla, and I got enamored by her forthrightness, and she got enamored with my, cavalry officer.
Personality.
I used to be handsome. So,
I'm quite sure you are.
Only
Yes.
the men on this show have to be handsome.
okay.
Yeah.
So those were the times. So, and she had never ridden a bicycle. She had never traveled in a train, leave aside a aircraft. So she got married with me, and the first time we traveled in train was from Jammu to Chandigarh, and the whole night the guys were snoring, and she said never again. And then she, we have a culture in the army that we don't use the government transport, for carrying our families and all that. I mean, we have that honor code and things like that. So everybody drives, and earlier it used to be scooters, then it got to be cars, and we had a car, we got a new car, and she said, okay, I want to learn driving, and she had never learned to bicycling. And so she hired one driver, and second one, and third one, and we went to Wellington for a staff college course, and there she said, now there are curves here, so I need another driver to teach me, and then she banged the car, and then it was a fifth driver, then sixth and seventh, 9 drivers. Oh, and after 9 drivers, she was very proficient, except that she could not park, she could not reverse. So these 2 things were
वो
lacking.
9th वाले को पहले बुला लो.
So we bought a car. She said, I want a new car. So I said, okay, when I retired, I had got my gratuity, and I'm, reasonably, since I was the only son, so I had inherited something, so I got her a car. And that car, you'll be surprised to know, in 9 years, did 3,500 kilometers.
Oh my God.
It was a white elephant. And finally, we sold it off last year. And so this is the kind of thing, I have. So she motivates, she brings down subjects, she's got that thing, she's forgetful on her own account.
He's so lucky.
So
Forgetful lines are missing.
Selectively.
When we get out of the house, she's been in Chandigarh for 40 years now, and we are married for 38 years. And she's been going, we are staying in the same house, same locality, she comes out, hey, ATM kaise khul gaya? Come. And that ATM is about 42 years old.
That's taking it too far.
And she hasn't been ever to an ATM. So how's the ATM separate? So suddenly I find that, she's arousing something in me. And then suddenly she goes for a shopping.
Note the use of the words. Note the use of the words.
She comes out, and I have a black car, and she comes out shopping. She sees a black car, sits in the passenger seat, it's somebody else's car. Look,
Masala for your middle. Basically, she is a living persona who gives you
Inspiration, content.
The best part is I'm lucky, she doesn't mind.
That one is the real thing.
वैसे ये तारीफ आपको भी कर देनी चाहिए और मुझे भी कर देनी चाहिए. I must say even my better half, I keep writing funny things about her. Never mind.
But I'm doing this not for golf.
That you would happen to get it is incidental. That's just a side effect
That
of the whole
file is
thing.
lying in pending tray for a long time.
उसी वही पे रहने.
Way better.
Nilesh ji, the high of your voice, when you feel that praise, you receive that accolade, being recognized, the voice, the personality, the wit, the writing, how does it feel? What do you like the best?
The fact that I can use my voice to make people feel exactly as I want them to feel. Now that's a very big high. And it doesn't only happen when I'm moderating or talking on a lit fest or behind a microphone. The most fulfilling incidents are when I'm speaking to someone on the phone, and at the end of the conversation I find that I've turned the mood of the person around from what it was before to what it is afterwards, just because I spoke in a particular way. That's when I think the voice has tremendous power, and I enjoy using my voice for that.
How about a kavita?
Oh yes. I love to recite poetry, चाहे मेरी हो चाहे किसी और की हो. I also write poetry,
Right.
which I have done for a long time now. I've got one little piece which is actually not within my genre because I'm not a very romantic person.
You are.
But this I don't quite. My wife wouldn't agree with you. She'd call you a fool for saying that. But yet,
Nobody ever called me fool.
she sure will. She sure will for this one. Sure will for this one. So I'll recite a poem which is a softer thing than what I'm normally used to saying.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now this is a poem which I wrote just a few months ago. कुछ भी नहीं चाहिए तुमसे, मुझे कुछ भी मत दो. प्यार है मुझसे तुम्हें, चाहे ये भी ना कहो. सिर्फ एक बार किसी दिन जब साथ बैठो मेरे, तो अपना सर रख दो मेरे कंधे पर और आंखें मूंद लो. जब खोलो अपनी आंख तो बस एक पल के लिए देखो मेरी आंखों में, और अगर सुकून मिला है तब भी कुछ ना कहो.
क्या बात.
सिर्फ महसूस करने दो उस पल को जिसमें मैंने तुम्हें कुछ दिया. उसके बाद चाहे प्यार है मुझसे तुम्हें ये भी ना कहो. उसके बाद चाहे प्यार है मुझसे तुम्हें ये भी ना कहो, क्योंकि तब मुझे सब कुछ मिल गया होगा और कुछ भी नहीं चाहिए तुमसे और कुछ भी ना कहो.
क्या बात है, क्या बात है. कहते हैं कि नीलेश जी का है अंदाज़े बयां, और अवनीश जी आपका भी
good vibe, good vibe.
Great vibes, great vibes. In fact,
Great
somebody
vibes.
said a good vibe show को great vibe show बनाना है. मुझे लग रहा है आज से शुरुआत होगी. So Avnish ji, you've been on stage a lot and with some IPs as well. You can add as many V's as you like. But any incident of when you're moderating a session?
You know, I was quite surprised myself when I first came on stage and moderated a session. I was nervous, getting onto stage and talking with people who are achievers in their field. Like for example, if Neelesh ji, I have to moderate, I have to get to know him because he's a there is so much of vastness about him. So similarly, so moderator is the guy. If I have to moderate two authors, I have to go through their books. I have to get to know their. So I will not talk about VIPs because everybody is a VIP. All authors are VVIPs and all that. But one or two instances. One was there is a lady. She's a wonderful poetess. Her name is Neelesh Kulkarni. And I was moderating a session with her along with another cop who had written a book on India. But Lily's book was What is on the Plate, The World is on the Plate or something, where she has given out recipes, the recipes
She's
that
written
she
that book.
Yes, you read that. I've read that.
And she was very, her bio data ran 2-3 pages, so if I had wanted to give out each and every word of her bio, it would have taken 30 minutes as it is, so I cut it short. She was annoyed with me. And then I asked her about some recipes which she thought I'll ask her about some other recipes. And in one of the chapters, because I had gone through the book, she's written that I've learned all this from my mother. So I just wanted to add to her woes. I said, my husband was sitting there. I said, ma'am, isn't your husband feeling bad that his mother is not being mentioned? That was the end of it. And thereafter, we just give a smile to each other. Otherwise, there is no moderation. In fact, Mr. Atray was there. Kasoli, he was there. And then we had another income tax commissioner. He's a wonderful author. Mr. Mandeep Rai. He writes books.
Nice guy.
He's got knowledge you can't imagine. He writes about military, he writes about First World War, he writes about Second World War, Neurology. And he goes into detail. In the latest book I read about the First World War, how it progressed and how, this country went. Amazing. So he said that, Khushwant Singh mentioned about his book and he said, this book is worth reading and he's a wonderful author. I said, it's not in public domain that he was, battling some income tax notices.
Well said.
I kind of my forte is, first I read the books, I get to know about the author, but I want to have a discussion which leads on to the lighter side, rather than an issue, because there is audience there. If there are 100 people sitting there, 80 are looking for good fun.
Yes, true.
So I target that, and I
With a straight face. I've seen
with a
you
straight
with a
face, I
straight
think,
face.
you know, this guy the other day, the last session that we had, this friend who runs a publishing house, he comes to me, he says, Colonel Saab, it seems, you know, you bought a ticket for Jaipur, you are boarding a plane for Chennai, but actually you end up at, you know, Sri Lanka.
Well done, well done.
But that comes naturally, I don't think so, and I'm quite surprised when people tell me you have a poker face, you do this, and you know, that.
You're a natural.
It's who you are actually. That's what's
I'm
important. It's who
grateful
you are.
that, you know, and it coming from you guys, coming from Mr. Atray, who's, you know, into it full length.
नहीं, ये part of the plan नहीं है, ये वाली तारीफ part of the
ये edit हो जाएगी, ये edit हो जाएगी.
No, but
One final word from Neelesh ji for our viewers, just some advice for the youngsters.
Don't think in terms of binaries. I think that's a pet advice that I give to everybody. We are quite now into the habit of thinking of left and right, north and south, top and bottom, whereas the world always exists somewhere in the middle. So when somebody gives you one end of the story, always look for the other end, because it is between the ends that the truth actually lies.
One line from you, Avnish ji.
I think the younger lot are doing much better than what we were. Frankly speaking, they are wiser, they are more respectful, they are naughty. They are, you know, I would say, be original, do what you are doing. Keep on.
Be original, be yourselves.
Yes.
Thank you for being yourselves. Wonderful conversation. इतना मजा आया never before. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Avinash.
Acceptable. Munish, not acceptable.
Munish not acceptable. True, true, true.